The tactical operations center hummed with controlled tension until Major Thompson's patience snapped. "Keep monitoring the feeds, Sergeant Kim," he commanded, irritation clear in his voice. The unassuming woman in standard-issue combat gear leaned toward her drone control console and spoke 7 words over the radio that changed everything. The effect was immediate. The radio operator's headset clattered to the floor. Field commanders froze mid-stride and faces drained of color throughout the mobile command post. No one had expected the tech support specialist to identify a complex ambush formation. No one had expected the quiet woman relegated to the equipment van to save an entire infantry unit from annihilation. No one had expected the truth. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If this story captivated you, please consider subscribing. We share powerful stories of unsung heroes every week. The Mobile Tactical Operations Center buzzed with the constant hum of electronic surveillance equipment and urgent radio chatter. Banks of monitors displayed real-time aerial feeds, thermal imaging, and tactical maps marked with blue friendly forces and red threat indicators. The air carried the scent of strong coffee and heated electronics, mixed with the tension that came with coordinating live combat operations. It was 1,400 hours on what had begun as a standard reconnaissance patrol in the mountains outside Kandahar, Afghanistan. Technical Sergeant Sarah Kim sat at her assigned drone operations station, deliberately isolated in the rear of the armored communications vehicle. Her auburn hair was pulled back in regulation military style, no makeup visible on her focused face. Mid-20s, with sharp eyes that spoke of technical precision rather than battlefield experience. Her attention moved constantly between multiple drone camera feeds and sensor readouts, while her physical presence was carefully minimized in the male-dominated command environment. To a casual observer, she might have been any support technician, a recent graduate from drone pilot school perhaps, or another specialist kept safely away from direct combat exposure. She occasionally made notes in a military standard logbook, her entries methodical and detailed. Unlike the infantry officers and senior NCOs who filled the command post with their combat patches and field equipment, she wore no visible markers of operational experience or combat deployments. Just a technician, it seemed, with specialized training and an assignment to provide surveillance support from a secure distance. The operation underway involved a joint patrol mission for Bravo Company, conducting a sweep for insurgent activity along known smuggling routes. The mission had progressed according to plan, movement routes confirmed, checkpoint positions established, and regular communication maintained with base operations. Captain Martinez, a veteran infantry officer with multiple combat tours, coordinated the ground operations with practiced authority, moving between communication stations and monitoring tactical displays throughout the mobile command post. Bravo Company had clear protocols to follow regarding patrol movements. Martinez explained to the operations staff, his voice carrying across the cramped vehicle interior. Their decision to investigate the suspected weapons cache directly follows established reconnaissance procedures. Major Thompson sat rigid at the primary command console, his face reflecting the weight of operational responsibility. A career officer with 18 years of service, he looked intense somehow in his desert combat uniform, as if the complexity of coordinating multiple moving elements had heightened his focus during recent hours. Sarah watched it all from her isolated workstation, her expression revealing nothing. Only the occasional adjustment of her drone control joystick suggested any emotional response to the unfolding tactical situation. When Captain Martinez called for updated surveillance coverage, heads turned briefly towards Sarah's position at the drone operations station. Sergeant Kim has been maintaining continuous overwatch of the patrol route, Captain Martinez announced. She may have additional visual intelligence on terrain conditions ahead of the unit. She approached the central briefing area with a measured professionalism that seemed at odds with her support role assignment. Something about her movement, shoulders square, steps confident, eyes constantly scanning the tactical displays, caught the attention of a weathered master sergeant seated near the radio console. He observed her with growing interest, noting details that didn't quite fit the standard technician profile. Major Thompson, focused and methodical, watched her with narrowed attention as she prepared her surveillance report. The major was known for his direct approach to tactical decision-making and operational efficiency. Today, he wore command authority like body armor, his field uniform bearing the dust of recent forward deployments. Please provide your current surveillance assessment for the record, instructed Major Thompson. Technical Sergeant Sarah Kim, unmanned aerial systems operator, she replied. Her voice was calm but clear, her military bearing professional. Captain Martinez began his briefing questions, and Sarah's responses were technically accurate and precise, but delivered in such a controlled, measured tone that Major Thompson soon grew visibly impatient. Several times, other staff members had to ask her to clarify technical terminology. Sergeant Kim, Major Thompson finally interrupted. The entire command staff needs to understand your surveillance data clearly. Speak in terms we can all follow. Yes, sir, Sarah responded, barely adjusting her technical vocabulary. Captain Martinez continued. Sergeant Kim, can you explain your current drone positioning and surveillance coverage of the patrol route? I've been maintaining continuous aerial reconnaissance using two MQ-9 Reaper drones positioned at optimal altitudes for maximum area coverage, she replied, her voice still frustratingly technical. I've established overlapping surveillance sectors that provide complete visual coverage of the intended movement corridor and adjacent terrain features. And what have your sensors detected? I've documented normal baseline activity patterns consistent with rural agricultural areas. No significant thermal signatures or movement anomalies detected in the primary surveillance zones. Standard electromagnetic spectrum analysis indicates minimal communication activity beyond expected civilian mobile device usage. Have you documented these surveillance findings? Yes, I've logged all sensor data and created a comprehensive digital archive of visual reconnaissance information with timestamp correlation to patrol movement phases. Was this technical analysis reviewed by intelligence staff? It was forwarded to the appropriate intelligence distribution channels per standard operating procedures. The intelligence officer, Lieutenant Colonel Davis, approached for additional questioning with a somewhat dismissive demeanor. Tall and commanding with graying temples that suggested extensive field experience, he moved with the confidence of someone accustomed to evaluating technical reports from rear area support personnel. Sergeant Kim, what specific training qualifies you to interpret complex battlefield surveillance data? I completed advanced unmanned aerial systems training at Creech Air Force Base, including sensor interpretation and battlefield intelligence analysis courses. And what level of operational experience? His tone suggested the answer would confirm her limited field credentials. I achieved expert-level certification in multiple drone platforms and sensor systems, Sarah responded professionally. Lieutenant Colonel Davis smiled slightly. Sergeant Kim, how could you possibly understand the tactical complexities of ground combat operations when you've been operating drones remotely for only 18 months? Something flickered across Major Thompson's face. A brief expression of recognition quickly suppressed. He studied Sarah more carefully now, noting details he had previously overlooked. Sir, respectfully, Master Sergeant Rodriguez interjected. Sergeant Kim's technical analysis should be evaluated based on the quality of her surveillance data, not assumptions about her operational background. Agreed, Major Thompson replied, his eyes remaining fixed on Sarah. Lieutenant Colonel Davis adjusted his approach. Let me rephrase. What direct ground combat experience do you have that would qualify you to assess tactical threats from aerial surveillance? Sarah paused before answering, her eyes briefly meeting those of the weathered Master Sergeant near the communications console. My background includes some practical application of surveillance techniques in operational environments, she said carefully. Could you be more specific about this operational experience? That information involves previous assignments that may not be directly relevant to current mission parameters. Lieutenant Colonel Davis looked toward the commanding officer. Sir, if the sergeant lacks relevant ground combat experience, her interpretation of aerial surveillance should be weighted accordingly in our tactical assessments. I'll allow the line of questioning to continue, Major Thompson ruled. Sergeant Kim, please provide more detail about your relevant operational background. Sarah's expression remained neutral. My previous operational experience involves classified surveillance programs. How convenient, Lieutenant Colonel Davis remarked dryly. So we're expected to give significant weight to your tactical assessments without knowing your actual qualifications to make such battlefield judgments? I'm providing technical analysis of drone surveillance data using established military intelligence protocols and sensor interpretation procedures. As the questioning continued, Sarah responded with increasingly sophisticated details about advanced surveillance techniques, threat pattern recognition, and tactical intelligence analysis that made several combat officers exchange meaningful glances. She referenced specific sensor capabilities, electronic warfare countermeasures, and operational security procedures that seemed well beyond the knowledge base of a standard drone technician. When shown a tactical map of the area where Bravo Company was currently operating, her eyes studied it with an intensity that suggested deeper familiarity, her professional composure revealing subtle signs of personal investment in the outcome. Do you recognize specific features of this operational terrain, Sergeant Kim? Lieutenant Colonel Davis asked. Yes, it's the sector where Bravo Company is conducting their current reconnaissance patrol, with particular focus on the valley approach routes and elevated observation positions. And your aerial surveillance of this region has confirmed what exactly? Your technical analysis failed to identify any significant threats that would alter our current operational planning. Sarah's voice remained steady and professional. My drone surveillance has documented baseline activity patterns and terrain conditions. My technical recommendations for enhanced sensor coverage of specific areas were included in my formal surveillance reports. In the mobile command post, the older master sergeant with extensive combat deployment ribbons watched Sarah with growing intensity, his weathered face reflecting concentration as if trying to place half-remembered details from previous operations. The afternoon hours passed as Captain Martinez returned for follow-up questions, asking Sarah about specific surveillance protocols used during the reconnaissance mission. Can you explain the standard drone coverage procedures for a ground reconnaissance operation of this scope? Martinez asked. The unmanned aerial systems would establish primary and secondary surveillance orbits covering the ground unit's movement corridor, she explained, her voice maintaining that technical precision. Standard protocols require continuous visual coverage with redundant sensor platforms and regular communication of reconnaissance updates to ground commanders. And if those surveillance systems detected unexpected threats or tactical changes, the drone operators would immediately alert ground commanders using priority communication channels and reposition aerial assets to provide enhanced surveillance of threat areas, she explained with a level of tactical sophistication that raised eyebrows among the infantry officers present. Major Thompson leaned forward, his patience with technical jargon wearing visibly thin. Sergeant Kim, I've asked you repeatedly to communicate in practical terms. This command post cannot effectively utilize surveillance intelligence that requires technical translation. I apologize, sir, Sarah replied, her communication style barely becoming less technical. The older master sergeant in the command post now leaned forward at his position, his eyes never leaving Sarah's face, recognition seeming to dawn slowly, his expression shifting from casual interest to something approaching concern. Lieutenant Colonel Davis seized on the major's frustration. Perhaps Sergeant Kim's reliance on technical terminology reflects her limited understanding of how surveillance intelligence actually applies to ground combat operations. Captain Martinez responded immediately. Sir, that's an unfair characterization of the sergeant's technical expertise. Noted, Captain, Major Thompson replied firmly. Lieutenant Colonel Davis, please focus your questions on the sergeant's surveillance findings rather than speculating about her capabilities. Lieutenant Colonel Davis nodded in acknowledgement. Sergeant Kim, in your professional assessment as a drone operator, was there anything in your aerial surveillance that would indicate modification of current patrol procedures for Bravo Company? Sarah looked directly at the main tactical display for the first time during the briefing. My surveillance data suggests terrain conditions and activity patterns that warrant enhanced situational awareness. That wasn't my specific question. Based on what your drones observed, should current ground operations continue as planned? Based on my technical analysis of aerial surveillance data, yes, but with recommendations for modified sensor coverage of specific terrain features. Lieutenant Colonel Davis's expression hardened. Are you suggesting that operational planning staff has inadequately assessed surveillance requirements? I'm stating that my technical recommendations for enhanced drone coverage differed from the surveillance parameters actually implemented for this mission. The command post stirred with quiet discussion. Major Thompson tapped his pen once against his console, restoring order. Sergeant Kim, Major Thompson said, his voice carrying obvious impatience. You need to explain that technical assessment in practical terms the entire command staff can understand. What specific terrain features require different surveillance coverage? Sarah paused, her eyes scanning the command post briefly before returning to the major. When she spoke, her voice maintained that technical precision, forcing staff officers to pay closer attention. My aerial surveillance analysis identified terrain features in grid squares 7 Alpha through 12 Charlie that exhibit characteristics inconsistent with normal agricultural activity patterns. These areas were not included in the primary surveillance tasking provided to drone operations. Major Thompson's head lifted, his carefully maintained operational focus sharpening noticeably. The weathered master sergeant's expression showed growing recognition as he studied Sarah with renewed intensity. Sergeant Kim, Major Thompson said firmly, operational urgency evident in his tone. This is critical information. Explain clearly what your drones detected in those grid squares. Sarah looked directly at Major Thompson. A moment of quiet recognition seemed to pass between them, though the major quickly returned to professional command demeanor. The experienced master sergeant in the command post was now gripping his radio handset, his knuckles showing white. Major Thompson leaned forward with visible concern at his command console. Sergeant Kim, we have troops in the field right now. If your surveillance detected something significant, report it immediately. The command post fell silent. For the first time since beginning her technical briefing, Sarah looked directly at Major Thompson with unmistakable urgency. The quiet recognition between them became more evident, though the major maintained his command composure. The experienced master sergeant near the communications console leaned forward, his hands ready at his equipment controls. Suddenly, urgent radio traffic crackled through the main communication system. A frantic voice from Bravo Company's lead element reported movement and possible contact ahead of their position. The transmission was brief, tense, and cut off with sounds of small arms fire before ending abruptly. All stations, this is Bravo 6, Major Thompson called over the radio. Report status immediately. The communications bay filled with static and broken transmissions as various elements tried to respond. The situation was confusing, with overlapping radio traffic and incomplete situation reports from multiple ground units. Sarah leaned toward her drone control console and spoke clearly over the command frequency. Bravo 6, this is Overwatch. I have eyes on multiple hostile positions surrounding your lead elements. Grid coordinates 41, Tango, 8847 through 8851. You're walking into a complex ambush. Recommend immediate halt and withdrawal to cover. The effect was immediate and electric. Major Thompson's radio handset nearly slipped from his grasp. Several staff officers physically straightened at their stations as if receiving critical intelligence. Lieutenant Colonel Davis's face showed complete shock. The weathered master sergeant near the communications console stood up quickly, then deliberately sat back down with recognition evident in his expression. Complete silence fell over the command post as understanding dawned across various faces. Some looked confused by the sudden tactical expertise. Others appeared shocked by the authority in her voice, and a few, those who grasped the significance of what they had just witnessed, seemed stunned. Sarah continued in her normal controlled voice, but now everyone was listening intently. That surveillance data was collected using enhanced sensor packages and advanced reconnaissance techniques I learned during my deployment with the 75th Ranger Regiment's Special Operations Surveillance Teams 3 years ago. I was also the drone operator attached to Task Force Griffin, which Major Thompson personally commanded during classified operations before our unit was disbanded. She systematically activated multiple drone camera feeds on the main display screens and highlighted them for the command staff to observe. These are real-time thermal and visual feeds showing the ambush positions that Bravo Company is approaching. The hostile forces aren't visible using standard surveillance techniques, but they become apparent when you know the specific indicators to look for from previous special operations experience. Major Thompson attempted to maintain command composure, but his voice carried obvious recognition. Sergeant Kim, this represents a significant departure from standard drone operation procedures. My team and I were reassigned to regular Army units after Task Force Griffin was classified and disbanded. Sarah continued calmly. I've spent the last 2 years working under standard military occupational specialty classifications while waiting for another situation where my specialized surveillance training could prevent soldiers from walking into the same kind of trap that decimated my previous unit. A younger intelligence analyst near the communications console looked up with confusion. This doesn't make sense. Task Force Griffin's drone operators were all reported as transferred to different assignments after that program ended. The weathered master sergeant turned to address him quietly. Look at her surveillance techniques, Lieutenant. Look at how she's coordinating those drone feeds. You don't learn that level of tactical reconnaissance in regular drone school. Sarah activated additional surveillance displays to reveal detailed intelligence about hostile positions, weapon placements, and tactical coordination that had been invisible using conventional reconnaissance methods. My previous unit was disbanded because we discovered that senior officers were deliberately providing our special operations surveillance intelligence to hostile forces through contractors who were supposed to be supporting our missions. The command post erupted into controlled activity as staff officers began coordinating immediate tactical responses. Major Thompson activated emergency communication protocols, his face showing a combination of shock and professional determination. This command post will implement immediate emergency procedures, he declared, his voice steady despite obvious emotional impact. But before anyone could fully process the implications, Sarah continued. Sir, Bravo Company has approximately 4 minutes before they reach the primary kill zone. I've spent 2 years analyzing similar ambush patterns and gathering evidence about the intelligence leaks that led to my unit's disbanding. This is the same tactical setup, same coordination methods, same intelligence compromise. Major Thompson slowly turned in his command chair, his operational authority visibly affected by recognition. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and renewed trust. Task Force Griffin was classified above top secret, Sarah continued. Our mission involved providing surveillance support for operations targeting weapons trafficking networks operating along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. We discovered that our reconnaissance intelligence was being systematically compromised by someone with access to our operational planning, someone who was selling our surveillance data to the same networks we were supposed to be monitoring. She activated her drone control systems and displayed an encrypted data storage device. This contains 3 years of surveillance data, communication intercepts, and tactical intelligence that documents how our special operations were being systematically betrayed. Bravo Company isn't facing a random ambush. They're walking into a trap that was set using leaked intelligence about their patrol route and timing. Lieutenant Colonel Davis attempted to restore normal briefing procedures, but found himself struggling with the tactical implications. Sergeant Kim, this represents highly irregular intelligence reporting procedures. My unit was disbanded and scattered to prevent us from investigating the intelligence leaks further, Sarah continued with professional calm. I was the designated survivor who maintained all our surveillance evidence and operational documentation. I've spent 2 years working in regular assignments while waiting for the right moment to expose the source of those intelligence compromises and prevent other units from being ambushed using the same methods. Captain Martinez approached Sarah with obvious concern and growing respect. Specialist Griffin, if what you're saying is accurate, how did you maintain access to classified surveillance capabilities, and why choose this moment to reveal your background? Sarah's professional composure never wavered. I maintained access because I never officially left special operations. My assignment to regular drone operations was supposed to be temporary cover while Task Force Griffin investigated the intelligence leaks. When the investigation was shut down and the unit disbanded, I continued gathering evidence using my legitimate access to surveillance systems. She indicated the real-time drone feeds showing hostile positions surrounding Bravo Company. I chose this moment because Bravo Company is about to be killed using the same intelligence compromise that destroyed my previous unit. The leaked information about their patrol route came from the same source that has been selling operational intelligence for the past 3 years. The weathered master sergeant approached the briefing area. Sir, request permission to address the command staff. I am Master Sergeant Coleman, recently returned from deployment with Special Operations Forces. I worked with Task Force Griffin during their classified operations. He turned to face Sarah. Specialist Griffin was one of the most skilled surveillance operators I encountered during my career. If she says this ambush was set using leaked intelligence, I believe her assessment without question. Lieutenant Colonel Davis interjected with growing frustration. This is highly irregular, but it doesn't change the immediate tactical situation we're facing. Bravo Company needs immediate support regardless of any alleged intelligence compromises. The situations are connected, Sarah replied. Bravo Company was specifically targeted because their reconnaissance mission was getting too close to the same weapons trafficking networks that my unit was investigating. Same operational pattern, same intelligence source, same tactical setup. She activated additional surveillance data on her control systems. This is communications intelligence showing that hostile forces received advanced notification of Bravo Company's patrol route, timing, and operational objectives. The source of that intelligence leak is the same person who compromised Task Force Griffin's operations 3 years ago. Major Thompson studied the surveillance displays, his command authority gradually returning as he processed the tactical intelligence. This communications intercept wasn't included in our pre-mission intelligence briefing because it was deliberately removed by the same person who has been compromising our operations, Sarah said, just like the surveillance intelligence my unit collected was altered before reaching operational commanders. The pattern is identical because the source is identical. The command post had grown absolutely focused. Every person present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary, while simultaneously coordinating an immediate tactical response to save soldiers in contact. Even the radio operators had prioritized Sarah's intelligence updates while maintaining emergency communications with Bravo Company. Captain Martinez approached the command console. Sir, based on this new intelligence, I recommend immediate modification of our tactical response and potentially reassessing how this operation was planned. Major Thompson nodded with restored command confidence. Agreed. All tactical responses will be modified immediately based on current surveillance intelligence. He paused, then added, Specialist Griffin will remain integrated with command operations until this tactical situation is resolved. As staff officers coordinated the emergency response, Sarah continued her briefing. There's additional information you need to understand, sir. She accessed a secured file on her surveillance system. This contains the original tactical intelligence assessment for today's mission with your authorization signature. And this, she displayed another document, is the modified intelligence briefing that was actually provided to Bravo Company. The threat assessments don't match. Major Thompson examined both documents with obvious shock. Someone altered the intelligence briefing after I approved it, he said, recognition and anger evident in his voice. Yes, Sarah confirmed. You've been carrying operational responsibility for tactical decisions based on compromised intelligence you never actually authorized. The same person who destroyed Task Force Griffin has been systematically altering operational intelligence to serve hostile interests. Master Sergeant Coleman moved closer to the display. I always wondered why certain operations seemed to face unexpected resistance. This explains tactical problems we've been encountering across multiple deployments. Major Thompson looked up, professional determination overriding emotional impact. I've been commanding operations for 2 years believing my intelligence assessments were reaching my soldiers accurately. I authorized tactical plans, but someone has been systematically modifying them. The command post entrance opened, and a team of military investigators entered, led by a serious-looking colonel from Criminal Investigation Division. What's the status of this tactical emergency? The colonel demanded. Major Thompson, I'm Colonel Anderson from CID. We received credible intelligence yesterday indicating serious operational security breaches involving intelligence personnel and weapons trafficking networks. We understand there may be connected tactical intelligence being reported in this command post. Sarah allowed herself a slight smile. Exactly on schedule, she said quietly. Colonel Anderson approached her position. You would be Specialist Griffin, formerly of Task Force Griffin. I would be. We have extensive questions about your surveillance activities and the evidence you've been collecting regarding intelligence compromises. And I have comprehensive answers, Colonel. 3 years of documentation. The Colonel addressed Major Thompson. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to coordinate with your tactical operations while securing the intelligence Specialist Griffin has provided for formal investigation. Major Thompson nodded decisively. Granted, but our immediate priority is providing effective tactical support to Bravo Company based on accurate intelligence. Understood completely, sir. Our investigation supports rather than interferes with current tactical operations. The command post began reorganizing around both the tactical emergency and the security investigation, but Sarah remained integrated with the operational response rather than isolated from it. Major Thompson approached her directly. I still don't understand the complete picture, he said, looking directly at her surveillance displays. Why would you risk exposure to help with today's mission? Your cover assignment provided security while you gathered evidence about intelligence compromises. Because soldiers are going to die today unless someone provides them with accurate surveillance intelligence, Sarah replied simply. You trusted my tactical assessments during Task Force Griffin operations. You followed operational plans based on my surveillance data because you knew it was accurate and complete. How can you be certain I wasn't involved in the intelligence compromises that destroyed your unit? Sarah displayed a quiet smile. Because I've spent 3 years analyzing every detail of what happened to my unit. I know who altered intelligence reports and who profited from selling operational plans to hostile networks. Most importantly, I know you requested verification of intelligence assessments multiple times because you suspected something was wrong with the tactical planning process. Major Thompson's expression showed recognition. How could you possibly know about those verification requests? Those communications were classified at the highest levels. I had assistance from people within the intelligence community who weren't compromised, Sarah admitted. Not everyone involved in operational planning was participating in the intelligence sales. There are still professional soldiers within the system who wanted the truth exposed and who wanted to prevent other units from being ambushed because of systematically compromised intelligence. As she prepared to coordinate both tactical support and evidence transfer, Master Sergeant Coleman approached. Specialist, he said with formal respect, then dropped his voice. Sarah, we thought you had been transferred to a safe assignment after Task Force Griffin was disbanded. I know, she replied quietly. I maintained that cover while continuing the investigation we started. Thank you for trusting my surveillance assessments. What happens to Bravo Company now? Sarah indicated her drone displays showing real-time tactical coordination. Now we provide them with accurate surveillance support and proper tactical intelligence. They're going to survive this engagement because someone finally told the truth about the intelligence compromises. The command post remained focused on immediate tactical operations while simultaneously processing the broader implications of systematic intelligence betrayal. Major Thompson coordinated effective tactical responses while Colonel Anderson secured evidence for formal investigation. Sarah stood with the operational staff who had unknowingly been working with compromised intelligence for months or potentially years. From her surveillance equipment, she retrieved carefully preserved operational records from Task Force Griffin, mission logs, surveillance data, communication intercepts, tactical intelligence assessments, and presented them to the appropriate staff members who had been struggling with inconsistent intelligence reports. They maintained operational security until the end, she told them, referring to her former unit members. They never compromised their surveillance standards even when they realized our intelligence was being systematically leaked to hostile forces. A communications specialist who had processed intelligence reports from multiple special operations units held one of the data storage devices carefully. These surveillance techniques were always more sophisticated than anything we saw from regular drone operations, he said with growing understanding. They trained me to maintain the highest standards, Sarah said quietly. Everything I've done for the past 3 years was to honor their professional dedication and ensure other soldiers wouldn't die because of the same intelligence betrayals. As operational staff coordinated tactical support with restored confidence in their surveillance intelligence, Major Thompson approached once more. Specialist Griffin, the Pentagon will want comprehensive briefings about both your evidence and the intelligence compromises you've documented. Sarah nodded. I'm prepared for that. But first, Bravo Company needs to complete their tactical situation successfully. And the soldiers who might be at risk from other compromised operations? The evidence I've provided should allow you to identify which tactical operations and intelligence assessments have been systematically altered by the same source, Sarah replied with professional certainty. Every soldier deserves to operate with accurate intelligence support. Lieutenant Colonel Davis approached with obvious concern. I still struggle to understand how you can be certain those of us who unknowingly used compromised intelligence weren't deliberately participating in these security breaches. Because responsibility belongs with those who created the intelligence compromises, not those who were deceived by systematically altered information, Sarah explained. You've been carrying operational guilt for tactical problems that were caused by deliberate sabotage, not by professional failures of military judgment. As she prepared to leave the isolated drone operations station for integration with the main command staff, her position shifted from the back of the vehicle to the central coordination area, the transition of a technical specialist, standing with operational authority rather than a support technician relegated to equipment monitoring. For a moment, she paused to observe the tactical displays showing Bravo Company's successful navigation around the ambush positions. The operational staff was coordinating with accurate intelligence for the first time in years. Major Thompson was commanding tactical operations with restored confidence in his surveillance support. Lieutenant Colonel Davis was working to identify other potentially compromised intelligence assessments. Master Sergeant Coleman watched her from the communications console, his weathered face reflecting professional respect and determination. Sarah acknowledged him with a slight nod before focusing on continued tactical coordination. Her mission wasn't completely finished. There would be extensive security debriefings, formal criminal investigations, and probably congressional oversight hearings. The full scope of the intelligence compromises would need to be exposed, and those responsible held accountable at every level of the military hierarchy. But the most critical part was accomplished. The truth was revealed, and soldiers could again trust that their intelligence support was working to protect them rather than serve hostile interests through systematic betrayal. As tactical operations continued with proper surveillance coordination, a communications technician approached. Specialist Griffin, Colonel Anderson has arranged secure transportation for your continued participation in both tactical operations and formal investigation procedures. She coordinated final tactical handoffs while remaining conscious of the eyes following her transition from isolation to integration. Command staff, intelligence analysts, communications personnel. For 3 years, she had worked invisibly, maintaining technical competence while gathering evidence about systematic intelligence betrayal. Now she operated openly, her identity and expertise fully utilized for operational success rather than concealed for personal security. Master Sergeant Coleman approached her before she transitioned to investigative coordination. Specialist, he said quietly, what you accomplished, maintaining operational effectiveness while investigating intelligence compromises, gathering evidence while maintaining cover, revealing the truth at the critical moment. It represents exceptional professional courage. I had obligations to my unit and to soldiers who would face operations based on compromised intelligence, she replied simply. It was significantly more than professional obligation, he insisted. It was intelligence work and tactical coordination of the highest caliber under extremely difficult circumstances. Sarah allowed herself a professional smile. You trained us effectively during Task Force Griffin operations, Master Sergeant. I provided technical training and tactical procedures, he corrected. What you demonstrated today came from exceptional personal integrity and professional dedication. He watched her coordinate final evidence transfer with the investigative team, then addressed Major Thompson, who had joined them. Some soldiers never receive appropriate recognition for their contributions, he said quietly. They simply carry the responsibility of protecting others through exceptional professional performance. Major Thompson nodded, observing Sarah's coordination with both tactical and investigative personnel. And some truths require years of patient investigation to emerge properly. The afternoon light continued as Sarah's tactical coordination transitioned from the mobile command post to formal investigative procedures. Behind her, the command staff operated with renewed confidence as Bravo Company successfully completed their mission with accurate intelligence support and proper tactical coordination. The operational staff worked with restored trust, knowing their assessments would reach soldiers without systematic alteration by hostile interests. Ahead lay the challenge of ensuring complete accountability and dismantling the entire network responsible for systematic intelligence compromise. But for now, in this moment between concealed investigation and revealed truth, the simple act of providing accurate surveillance intelligence had transformed a potential tactical disaster into successful mission completion. The power of one soldier's quiet determination to honor fallen comrades and protect active soldiers. even when it required years of patient evidence gathering to expose betrayals that powerful interests had systematically concealed. As tactical operations concluded successfully, Sarah's radio crackled with an update from Bravo Company. All stations, this is Bravo 6. Mission complete, all personnel accounted for. Threat successfully avoided thanks to accurate surveillance coordination. Sarah closed her eyes briefly and smiled for the first time in 3 years, knowing that accurate intelligence had finally reached the soldiers who needed it most.